Hello viewers, I Nilafar Zarqam from Jamia Millia Islamia University welcome you again to a new episode on the theory of production analysis. In this episode, we shall discuss meaning of factors of production, its classification, meaning of capital and labor, role of capital, division of labor and its advantages. We'll also discuss concepts of products, total, average and marginal product, and the law of variable proportions. The first one, let's take factor of production. Its meaning: production of goods and services requires the use of factors of production, which are also called agents of production. Volume of production and therefore national income depends upon the supply of various factors of production and their efficiency or productivity. Since economic growth consists in expansion in total production of national income, the supply and the efficiency of the factors or agents of production are vital to the process of economic growth. But what we exactly mean by a factor of production? Fresser defines factor of production as a group or a class of productive resources. More explicitly, the term factor of production is used for a class of productive elements, the individual members of which are known as units of the factor, and all units of the factors rehomogeneous and interchangeable. Technically speaking, all the units of a factor are perfect substitutes of one another. This also implies that two different factors of production cannot be perfect substitutes of each other. It may also be noted that modern economists prefer to talk in terms of anonymous productive services, or more recently of merely inputs rather than the conventional factors of production such as land, labor, capital and enterprise. Thus, the goods or services which are used for the production of goods are called inputs, and what they produce is called output. This input-output analysis has become an important tool of modern economic analysis. Let's see the classification of factors of production. As mentioned above, factors of production have been classified into land, capital, labor and organization or entrepreneurship. Land in economics does not mean mere soil as in the ordinary speech. Land is in economics is synonymous with all the natural resources available from air, water, from above the land surface and below it, which can be used for production. Likewise, labor does not mean merely physical or mental exertion, but all types of work done by man for a monetary reward. By capital is meant the whole of the stock of wealth consisting of machines, tools, implements, raw material, etc., which is used for the production of further goods. Organization or entrepreneurship consists in bringing the above three factors together, assigning work to each and uncertainty of production. The entrepreneur who supplies these factors initiates and directs production and bears risk and uncertainty. Some economists have classified factors into two categories: land and labor, or nature and man, on the ground that they are the only original or primary factors. It is said that capital has no independent origin and is merely the outcome of combined efforts of land and labor, while organization or enterprise is merely a special form of a labor. But whatever the origin, being man-made instrument of production capital or being expanded while the supply of land as a whole is fixed. This has been made capital an important factor of production as a separate and distinct factor from land. Similarly, the entrepreneur works is of a distinct type from that of labor, and he is remunerated on a different basis. Thus, the fourfold classification of factor into land, labor, capital and enterprise is being followed even today. Let's see first, that is capital. Sometimes in economics also capital is used in sense of money. But when we talk of capital as a factor of production, to confuse capital with money is quite wrong. That money is used to purchase various factors such as raw materials, machinery, labor, which helps the individual to produce goods, but money itself does not directly help in the production of goods. The money which is available for investment and productive purpose has been called money capital or financial capital by some economists. But money capital is not the real capital. The real capital consists of machinery, tube wells, fertilizers, etc., which directly assist in the production of goods. Capital has been rightly defined as produced means of production. This definition distinguishes capital from both land and labor because they are not produced factors. Land and labor are often considered as primary or original factors of production, but capital is not a primary or original factor. It is a produced factor of production. Capital has been produced by man by working with nature. Therefore, capital may well be defined as a man-made instrument of production. Capital thus consists of those physical goods which are produced for use in future production. Machines, tools, instruments, factories, canals, dams, transport equipments, stocks of raw material are some of the examples of capital. All of them are produced by men to help in the production of future goods. So, according to Professor Richard T. Gill, a country's capital is its stock of produced or man-made means of production, consisting of such items as buildings, factories, machinery, tools, equipments, and inventories of goods in stock. Capital may be classified into fixed capital and working capital. Fixed capital are durable, produces goods which are used in the production again and again till they wear out. Machinery, tools, railways, tractors, factories, etc. are all fixed capital. Working capital, on the other hand, are the single-use producers, goods like raw materials, fertilizers, goods in process and fuel. They are used up in a single act of production. Now we'll see the next topic, that is labor. The contribution of labor to the national product and the income depends not only on the size of the labor force but also on its quality. By quality of labor we mean how much productive it is, that is, what is its level of productivity. A given labor force with higher productivity will yield a larger national product and income. Therefore, in this chapter, we shall discuss the factors on which productivity or efficiency of labor depends. An important factor determining efficiency of labor forces is the division of labor. Let's see some of the characteristics of labor. Labor exhibits the following characteristics. The first one, labor cannot be separated from the laborer himself, whereas land and capital are distinct from their owners, that is, landlords and capitalists. Second, the laborer does not sell to himself, he sells on his labor. It was only when the slavery system prevailed that the laborers were sold and purchased. But in modern times, workers sell only their labor in return for wages, but not the persons as such. Third point, labor is a perishable factor and it is not possible to store it for future use. If a worker does not get employment for some days, then the time so lost cannot be recovered. The labor time lost once is lost forever. Fourth point, labor lacks mobility. It is less mobile than even capital. This is because laborer is a human being with all his feelings of affection and attachment with the place he is presently residing and with the friends and relatives who lives there. It is difficult for him to leave them and shift from one place to another. However, despite this, some workers do migrate from one part of a country to another or even from one country to another in search of their livelihood. Fifth point, supply of labor is elastic, but it takes time to increase its overall supply by expanding population and providing them suitable training and skills required. Sixth point, efficiency of labor varies a good deal. Some workers are more efficient than others. The differences in efficiency are caused by their physical and mental capabilities as well as by the training and skill imparted to them. Their productivity differs also because of different quantity and quality of capital equipment used by them and different technologies with which they work. Let's see division of labor. Division of labor is an important feature of modern industrial organization. It occupies so important a place in the modern production process and adds so greatly to the total output and wealth of a country that Adam Smith, the father of economics, selected it as a first topic for discussion in his book, An Inquiry into the Nature and the Cause of Wealth of Nature. Division of labor may be simple or complex. Simple division of labor refers to the production of a single commodity by a person. In a society where simple division of labor prevails, every worker would be producing only one commodity. Some would be producing cloth, some will be making shoes, some others will be producing farm products, but everybody would be producing either farm products or clothes or shoes. In the old village society composed of farmers who produced agricultural goods, weavers who made cloths, cobblers who made and repaired shoes, etc. But in the modern days, division of labor is of complex type. In fact, it is a complex division of labor which has increased so greatly the productivity of the modern productive system. Complex division of labor means that the making of an article is split up into several processes, and each process is carried out by a separate worker or a separate group of workers. Thus, complex division of labor refers to the specialization in one operation or process. Every group of workers specializes only in one process in the production of a commodity. The process may be split up into sub-processes, and thus division of labor may become more complex. In modern tailoring shops, making of a shirt is broken up into different processes. Some workers only do the job of cutting, some other only do the job of sewing, and still a separate group of workers puts button on it, etc. So this is complex division of labor in making of shirts. Several advantages are claimed for the system of division of labor. The system of division of labor has proved to be immense benefit to society. Now we'll see some of the advantages of division of labor. The first come is increased in productivity. The greatest advantage of division of labor is that it increases immensely the productivity per worker. This point can be illustrated by the famous example of pin making given by Adam Smith. The process of pin making is divided into 18 distinct operations. 10 men make 48,000 pins in a day. One worker may therefore be considered to have made 4,800 pins in a day. In the absence of division of labor, one man could have made only one pin in a day, or at the most only 20 pins. Thus, if the division of the labor, the productive capacity of the individual and of the community has greatly increased. Second advantage, the right man in the right place. Another great advantage is that the work under division of labor is allotted according to the ability and capacity of the individual worker. They ensures a high degree of efficiency as the right man is put in the right job. Let's see the third advantage, that is dexterity and skill. The worker becomes highly skilled and acquires high degree of dexterity because of the repeated performance of the same operation. As the age-old dictum goes, practice makes a man perfect. The worker acquires perfection in his skill because he has to carry out the same operation over and over again. This adds to his productivity. Fourth advantage, inventions are facilitated. Another significant advantage is that it promotes the development of new ideas and better techniques of doing the work. It is due to the fact that when the worker is performing the same operation over and over again, he can think of doing that process in a better and improved manner. Even some mechanical device may occur to him to do that task easily and more efficiently. This division of labor results in inventions of new machinery and better tools. Fifth advantage, saving in time. Under division of labor, a worker platforms a part of the whole process and therefore he needs to learn only that much. Long periods of training are therefore rendered unnecessary. This saves great time and money. Further, as a worker remains employed on the same process, he does not waste his time in moving from one process to another. He therefore goes on working without loss of time. This results in saving in time. Let's see the next advantage, that is economy in the use of tools. A worker is not provided with a complete set of tools required for the whole process. He is provided with only those tools which are required by him for the performance of that part of the process which is allotted to him. Thus, one set of tools can be made used by many workers. This is a greater economic gain. Next advantage, cheaper goods. Another distinct advantage of division of labor is that the economies of large scales are reaped. The cost per unit tends to fall down when the commodity is produced on a large scale, which ensures the production of cheaper goods. Even poor people can buy them. As a result of this, the standards of living of the people rise. Next advantage, rise of entrepreneur. Since the work is divided into various processes, someone is required to coordinate the work. This has resulted in the rise of entrepreneurs, has greatly contributed to the increase in efficiency and the productivity of the modern economy. So we will now look at entrepreneurs. Having explained three factors, land, labor and capital, we now turn to the explanation of the fourth important factor, namely the entrepreneur. It is not enough to say that the production is a function of land, labor and capital. There must be some factor which combine these factors in the right proportion and initiates a process of production and also bear the risk involved in it. This factor is known as the entrepreneur. He has also been called as the organizer, the manager and the risk taker. But in these days of specialization, the task of a manager and organizer has become different from that of the entrepreneur. While the organization and the management include decision making of routine type, the real task of the entrepreneur is to initiate the production of work, not to manage the business affairs and to bear the risk involved in it. Now we will see production function, transforming inputs and outputs. The act of production involves the transformation of inputs into output. Production is a transformation of physical inputs into physical output. The output is thus a function of factors which are also called inputs. The functional relationship between physical inputs and physical output of a firm is known as a production function. Algebraically, production function can be written as capital Q equals to function of L, K, T, where Q stands for the quantity of output, capital L, capital K and capital D stands for quantities of factors labor, capital and land respectively. The above equations shows that the quantity Q, capital Q, of the output produced depends upon the quantities of the factors used. The production function expresses the relationship between the quantity of the output and the quantities of the various inputs used for the production. More precisely, the production function states the maximum quantity of output that can be produced with any given quantities of various inputs. If a small firm produces wooden tables in a day, its production function will consist of the maximum number of tables that can be produced from a given quantities of various inputs such as wood, varnish, labor time, machine time, floor space, so on. Two things must be noted in respect of production function. First, production function, like the demand function, must be considered with reference to a particular period of time. Production function expresses a flow of inputs resulting in a flow of output in a specific period of time. Secondly, production function of a firm is determined by the state of technology. When the technology advances, the production function changes with the result that greater flow of output can be obtained from the given inputs or smaller quantities of input can be used for producing a given quantity of output. In economic theory, we are interested in two types of production functions. First, we study the production function when the quantities of some inputs such as capital and land are kept constant and the quantities of one input such as labor or quantities of few inputs is varied. This kind of production function is capital Q equals to function of LK bar is called as a short run production function. The study of short run production is the subject matter of the law of diminishing returns, which is also called the law of variable proportions. Secondly, we study production function, input output relationship by varying all inputs, and this is called short run production function and can be expressed as capital Q equals to function of LKD. This forms the subject matter of the law of returns of scale. Generally, the terms constant and increasing returns are used with reference to constant and the increasing return to scale. Now, we will see concept of production. Regarding physical production by factors, there are three concepts. First one, total production. It is the amount of total output produced by a given amount of the factors, other factors held constant. It will be seen from the table 1. Second, average product. It is the total output produced per unit of a factor employed. Thus, average production is equal to total production divided by number of units of factors employed. If capital Q stands for total product, capital L for the number of a variable factor employed, then average product AP is given by AP equals to capital Q by capital L. We can measure the average product data given in the table 1. Third one, marginal product. It is the addition to the total production by the employment of an extra unit of a factor. It will be seen from table 1 that marginal product of labor increases in the beginning and then diminishes. Mathematically, if employment of a labor increase by delta L units, which yields an increase in the total output by delta Q units, the marginal physical product of labor is given by delta Q by delta L. That is, MPL is equal to delta Q by delta L. Let us have a look at the table 1 on the product schedule. So, we have this table with us. Now, let us come to the next topic, that is law of variable proportion. This law examines the production function with one factor variable. keeping the quantities of the other factors fixed. It refers to the input-output relation when the output is increased by varying the quantity of one input. When the quantities of one factor is varied, keeping the quantity of the other factors constant, the proportion between the variable factor and the fixed factor is altered. The ratio of employment of the variable factor to that of the fixed factor goes on increasing as the quantity of the variable factor is increased. Since under this law we study the effects on output of variations in factors proportions, this is also known as a law of variable proportion. Thus, law of variable proportion is similar to the famous law of diminishing returns of classical economics. This law has played a vital role in the history of economic thought and occupies an equally important place in the modern economic theory. As equal increments of one input are added, the inputs of other productive services being held constant, beyond a certain point, the resulting increment of product will decrease. That is, the marginal product will diminish. So finally, we have got to the end of today's session. Let's see what we have learned today. So finally, we have got to the end of today's session. Let's see what we have learned today in the chapter of Theory of Production Analysis. In this chapter, we have discussed its meaning and its classification. Now we know the concept of classification of factors of production and the concept of capital and labor. We have also discussed the role of capital and the division of labor and advantages of division of labor entrepreneur. Concept of product such as total, average and marginal product, and the law of variable proportions are also discussed in the script. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. We are ending here the chapter of Theory of Production Analysis, and we'll see you again discussing about our next topic on market and market structures. Till then, take care, bye, and thank you for watching.